What makes you think I'd do this for you?
This isn't for me, Tommy. This is for your damn cause.
My cause is my family now.
Tommy, I need this.
To have the guys that we would need to do this smart, we'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable.
So they just get to get away with this?
Nobody wants that.
Yeah, but that's what's happening.
Well, I can't go.
I know.
All right.
Welcome back to my analysis series, where I study scenes and characters from The Last of Us Part 2 in order to deepen our understanding of this story, as well as certain facets of storytelling in general. This is now my 4th video essay that I've posted, and before we dive in, I just want to take a quick moment to thank everyone who has been so supportive of these videos so far. I've loved reading all your comments, and I have an ever-growing list of scenes, characters, and story elements to analyze based on your requests. Your feedback and your engagement has meant a lot to me, so thank you. Today I want to talk about Tommy Miller, Joel's younger brother, and specifically about the way he behaves in the farm chapter of the game. This scene takes place about a year following the confrontation between Abby and Team Jackson at the theater in Seattle, and depicts a very different Tommy from the affable and caring man we know and love. Here he is bitter and mean, and I think a lot of people were taken aback by his behavior, and especially by the way he talks to Ellie. What I'd like to do today is to analyze Tommy as a character in order to facilitate an understanding of how he ended up like this, because I do think that given everything he has been through and just who he is as a person, it makes perfect sense that he would act this way. There are 3 key scenes we will need to analyze in order to recontextualize Tommy, but before we jump in, I want you to keep in mind the concept of honor.
In times of a crisis, a man must be able to fight and prevail. In times of peace, he must be able to care for his family, cultivate his mind, and serve his community and state civically. At all times, he must stand ready to serve whatever capacity he is needed. This, to me, is the ideal, circumscribing hard virtues and soft virtues into one whole. This is the complete man. He's a loving husband and father, loyal friend and brother, and yet would also not just be able to survive, but to completely lead in a disaster. And he could be called up by the military tomorrow to serve without breaking a sweat in boot camp. He's good at being a man, and he's a good man too. I promise you that as you strive to live a code of manhood that encompasses both strength and courage, and goodness and virtue, you will find true fulfillment and a sense of purpose and pride. Until next time, this is Brett McKay telling you to stay manly.
As a noun, honor can refer to one's adherence to doing what is right, a position of high respect or great esteem, or a privilege or rare opportunity to obtain pride and pleasure. It is a quality that places value on respect, pride, loyalty, morality, nobility, and honesty. As a verb, to honor something can mean to pay deep respect to someone or something, or to fulfill an obligation or promise. Honor, and the pursuit of it, also happens to be Tommy's driving motivator throughout the Last of Us series, as well as his fatal flaw. We first encountered Tommy as a young man at the beginning of The Last of Us Part 1. In the TV adaptation of The Last of Us on HBO, they established that Tommy was a war veteran who served in Operation Desert Storm, also known as the Gulf War.
Tommy's what we used to call a joiner. Dreams of becoming a hero. So he enlists in the Army right out of high school. A few months later, they ship him off to Desert Storm. Point is, being in the Army didn't make him feel much like a hero.
Given that the HBO adaptation expanded on elements that were hinted at in the games, I think it's safe to include some of the details they added in order to analyze the character's game counterparts in retrospect. Tommy having a military background makes a lot of sense, considering serving the army is usually seen as an honorable occupation, especially for a young man raised in the southern United States. And there were other wars he could have served in during the game's timeline, like the Iraq War. Tommy serving in the army would also explain his prowess as a sniper that we witnessed in The Last of Us Part 2, and which they also established in the HBO adaptation.
All this open country out here, it's a turkey shoot. I still got my 700, but I found a variable power scope, sub-MOA. And headshot those fuckers from a half-mile out.
On the night of the cordyceps outbreak, we first got a glimpse of Tommy's moral alignment when he and Joel argued over whether or not to stop and help some civilians.
See what they need.
Who do you think you're doing? Keep driving.
I got a kid, Joel.
So do we.
We have room.
Keep driving, Tommy.
This is also an introduction to the fundamental difference between the Miller brothers. Tommy's predilection for doing the right thing, even if it puts him in danger, versus Joel's pragmatism and prioritization of his loved one's safety over everything else. As the older brother and as a parent, Joel has been in the role of protector all his life, whereas Tommy, the impulsive and reckless younger brother, has only ever had to look out for himself. If we think about it in terms of traditional character archetypes, Joel would fall into the caregiver category, whereas Tommy would be the hero. Later that night, Tommy witnessed his niece, Sarah, die in Joel's arms. This was an extremely traumatic event, which would have a profound effect on each of them going forward, and would solidify their respective philosophies. Joel would become more nihilistic, rejecting hope and any obligation to other people and the greater good, in favor of looking out for him and his. Tommy, on the other hand, viewed Sarah's death as a call to action. Every day the CBI will directly and indirectly claim more lives, and Tommy will want to prevent that rather than contribute to it. He will want to save people, especially since he wasn't able to save Sarah. Unfortunately, Sarah will be the first in a line of people he loves whom he will be unable to save. In the years following Sarah's death, Tommy and Joel traveled to Boston together, and it's implied in both the games and in the show that they committed terrible acts of violence during that time.
So, you kill a lot of innocent people? I'll take that as a yes.
In the HBO adaptation, they implied that Tommy and Joel's more ruthless methods were not altogether necessary for their survival, but a course of action that they chose out of what they may have thought was necessity at the time.
We murdered people. We survived the only way we knew how. But there were other ways. We just weren't any good at them.
The brothers' violence, supposedly instigated by Joel, was traumatizing Tommy. He wanted to help people, not hurt them, and so he joined the Fireflies, hoping that their anti-oppression movement would better align with his values. This didn't sit well with Joel, who believed the Fireflies' initiative to overthrow Fedra, restore society, and cure the infection was futile, and he couldn't understand why his brother would risk his life for a doomed cause.
I was close with his brother, Tommy. Said if I was ever in a jam, I could rely on him.
During his time as a Firefly, Tommy worked alongside Eugene, a deceased member of the Jackson community and former Firefly who left his family in order to join the revolution.
They got into some real dark shit.
Like what?
He said he blew up a checkpoint at Denver QZ, killed 3 soldiers, and 2 civilians.
After witnessing the Fireflies' revolution lead to more violence and death, which didn't give Tommy the honorable, heroic feeling he was after, he became disillusioned with them too. At some point between Tommy joining the Fireflies and quitting them, he and Joel had a massive argument which would be their last conversation for a decade.
Tommy saw the world one way, I saw it the other.
And that's why he joined the Fireflies.
Yeah, your friend Marlene promised him hope.
She talks me into joining the Fireflies. Same mistake he made when he was 18. He wants to save the world.
That kept him busy for a while, but just like Tommy, he eventually quit that too.
How was it? Last time you saw him?
I believe his last words to me were, I don't ever want to see your goddamn face again.
Somehow, Tommy wound up in Wyoming, where after meeting his wife Maria and her father, Tommy contributed to the founding and development of the settlement of Jackson. Tommy and Maria became the unofficial leaders of the town, which would become a utopia in the wastes of the post-outbreak landscape.
This place gives them a second chance. Gives us all a second chance.
The Last of Us is, amongst other things, all about people finding something to fight for in this harsh and unforgiving world. Looking out for people, protecting the town, and being a leader gave Tommy back his sense of purpose. It also gave Tommy an opportunity to make up for his violent past and reconnect with who he truly is, an altruistic man who was always searching for a cause that would serve his internal pursuit of honor.
So, communism.
Nah, it ain't like that.
It is that, literally. This is the commune.
We're communists.
Creating a place free from violence and oppression, where people could be safe and live as normal a life as possible, is quite a feat, and a noble cause. In Jackson, Tommy could be part of something bigger than himself and save people like he has always wanted to do. In Jackson, Tommy found his light. And so we have arrived at the first scene we will be looking at more in depth. In storytelling, the given circumstances are relevant information and events that inform characters' actions in a scene. In this case, the given circumstances include Tommy and Joel's estrangement over the past 10 or so years, as this will be the first one-on-one conversation between the brothers since Tommy left Boston. Another relevant circumstance is this exchange right beforehand.
Here. It's a little faded, but it still looks pretty good.
I'm good.
You sure? I mean,
I've said I'm good.
A reminder of Sarah was the last thing Joel needed here. When there was a walking, talking one, he was at that point intending to offload onto Tommy. Joel's growing attachment to Ellie was terrifying him because he was afraid of failing her, or worse, of losing her, the way he did Sarah, Tess, and, to a lesser extent, Tommy himself. On the other hand, now that the initial shock of being reunited was wearing off, Tommy was wary of Joel's intentions for being there. He was probably suspecting that Joel wanted something from him, which wasn't entirely off the mark. A character's desired outcome of a scene is how they want the scene to end, or what they want to obtain from their scene partner over the course of the scene. The best scenes are often ones where the characters' respective desired outcomes are opposing each other, and each character therefore has to fight for what they want. Here, Joel obviously wants the scene to end with Tommy agreeing to take Ellie the rest of the way to the Fireflies. Tommy, on the other hand, wants Joel to demonstrate that he's changed since Tommy last saw him, that he's not the violent, selfish, and nihilistic person Tommy perceived Joel to be. Now, let's analyze the subtext, which is the underlying unspoken meaning to any line of dialogue.
It's quite the crew you got here.
yeah, they're good men. This place gives them a second chance. Gives us all a second chance.
This line sums up what I was talking about before. Jackson has given Tommy a second chance at the kind of life he wants to lead, as opposed to the path he was walking with Joel in Boston.
So why'd you leave Boston?
I've been on quite the adventure, little brother.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
Well, go on then.
Tommy's already on the defensive because he suspects Joel is only there because he wants something from him.
She's immune.
Immune to what? Oh,
Seen her-
come on.
I know, I've seen her breathe enough spores to take down a dozen men. And nothing. Now, I wouldn't have believed it neither, but I can show you.
All right. I'll bite. Why bring her here?
I was supposed to deliver to the Fireflies. The way I figure they're your boys. You finish the job, you collect the whole damn payment.
And at this point, Tommy's suspicions have been confirmed.
I haven't seen a Firefly in years.
You know where they are. Now, I'm not asking for much, Tommy. I just want some simple gear, enough to set me on my way.
What makes you think I'd do this for you?
This isn't for me, Tommy. This is for your damn cause.
My cause is my family now.
This line is probably a slap in the face for Joel. Tommy was moving on with his new family, and Joel felt left behind by the brother he had only ever tried to protect during a terrifying and dangerous period of time. Maria is, of course, Tommy's family by virtue of them being married, but Joel is also Tommy's family, and the only blood relative he has left. But of course, a large theme in The Last of Us series is how the bond between found family can be just as strong as blood.
You ain't talking about some walk in the park here.
Jesus, boy. Have Maria get some of your born-again friends to do it.
They got families too.
The term born again is used by Protestants to describe somebody who has discovered faith in Jesus Christ. Clearly, Joel isn't talking about finding Jesus here, but rather the Jackson residents' newfound faith in community, humanity, and purpose. To Joel, this lifestyle seems unrealistic, naive, and unsustainable. Perhaps he could also be accusing Tommy of playing God by leading these people towards a path of light, a path that Joel himself doesn't believe in. Joel scoffs at any semblance of hope because he has rejected it so absolutely. Though in meeting Ellie, his conviction is beginning to crack.
Tommy, I need this.
This is the most honest Joel will be in this scene. Unfortunately, because he didn't elaborate further on why he needs Tommy to do this for him, Tommy probably assumes it's because Joel doesn't believe in the Firefly's cause and so he simply wants nothing to do with it. He is remaining resolute in his choice to stay in the darkness while Tommy pursues the light. In that sense, Tommy perceives Joel as not having changed at all in the time they've been apart, which is likely as disappointing as it is frustrating.
You want some gear? Sure. But I ain't taking that girl off your hands.
This is how you gonna repay me, huh?
Repay you?
For all those goddamn years I took care of us.
Took care. That's what you call it? I got nothing but nightmares from those years.
You survived because of me.
It wasn't worth it.
Because Joel's attempt at honesty didn't work, he changed tactics by playing on Tommy's honorable nature. Joel kept Tommy alive during those years, for better or worse, and Tommy knows it. This has generated a debt of honor between them, which essentially means a debt that one is morally obligated or honor-bound to repay, even if you don't want to. Judging by the way Joel interacted with Bill earlier on, we know he is not above calling in favors when he needs them. And Tommy's response is admittedly quite petty. His survival led him to Jackson and to his wife, and though Joel may have been the instigator of their violence during those years, ultimately Tommy alone is responsible for his own choices and actions.
I bring you the cure from mankind, and you want to play the pissy little brother.
We ain't back in Boston. You lay your hands on me again, it won't end well for you.
The insinuation here is that back in Boston, Tommy would have rolled over under Joel's intimidation, and is implying that Joel had been physically aggressive towards him before. The relationship between the brothers was far from healthy and may even have been abusive. It also contains a threat regarding the fact that Joel is an outsider to this community and Tommy has backup if something goes awry. They're now on Tommy's turf, and he will not tolerate being bullied by Joel any longer. After this scene, the dam was set upon by a group of bandits. The Miller brothers sprang into action, and Joel put his life on the line to defend Tommy, his people, and his home while they made their way towards where Maria and Ellie were trapped.
Oh man, they were coming in from every direction. Then Maria was like, "We gotta run!" And so we dove over these tables, and this huge guy blasted with a shotgun.
Slow down. Listen, hey, are you hurt?
No.
God damn it.
This was Tommy realizing what Joel was trying to tell him before, the real reason why Joel needed him to take Ellie to the Fireflies. Tommy was witnessing how Joel had come to care for Ellie. Combined with the fact that Joel didn't hesitate to protect Tommy from the bandits, and the way he reacted when Tommy tried to give him the photo of Sarah, it all clicked into place for Tommy at that moment. Joel had changed. And he was afraid of losing someone he cared about again. Tommy was reminded of his brother's grief and trauma, of why Joel is the way he is. But he was seeing the protective, caregiving Joel he loved emerge again. His brother needed his help, and Tommy owed him his life and then some. Perhaps, in a way, Tommy blamed himself for Sarah's death, for not showing up in time to save her. And though he couldn't save Sarah 20 years ago, maybe he can make sure Ellie makes it now. And in that moment, Tommy's need to do the right thing by honoring his debt to Joel outweighed his responsibility to his found family in Jackson.
I have to do this. I don't know what else to say.
When Joel eventually changed his mind and decided to take Ellie to the Fireflies after all, Tommy offered both of them a place within Jackson once their mission was accomplished. This was a significant first step in the brothers' journey to repairing their relationship, as Tommy was offering Joel the same second chance that he felt Jackson had given him. At the end of The Last of Us Part 1, following Joel's massacre of the Fireflies in Salt Lake City, Joel and Ellie returned to Jackson to start a new life, with Joel holding fast to the lie he told Ellie about what really happened at the hospital. The prologue of The Last of Us Part 2 takes place a few weeks later. As Joel and Ellie settled into life in Jackson, Joel became unable to bear the burden of his choice and subsequent lie alone. While on patrol with Tommy, Joel confided in him about what really happened.
Jesus Christ, Joel. What do you do?
I saved her. Goddamn. That's that's a lot.
Since Tommy himself used to be a Firefly, hearing that his brother murdered a bunch of them, people he probably knew, like Marlene, would be a hard pill to swallow. I think Tommy had to come to terms with the trolley problem of it all, the sacrifice of a cure for humanity for one person's life, as well as the realization that Joel was still capable of the violence and brutality Tommy was all too familiar with. Then there's the fact that Joel lied to this little girl about what really happened in order to keep her in his life. But Tommy also had to weigh all of that against the reason why Joel did it. Tommy was witnessing his brother become a parent again, and he still bore the traumatic memory of watching Joel's only child die in his arms, so I think it's safe to say he could empathize with Joel's choices. After all, what would he have done if he had been given a second chance to save his niece?
About what we were talking about earlier. I can't say I'd have done different. I'll take it to the grave if I have to.
This moment between the Miller brothers is so significant. Tommy agreed to share this burden with Joel and to keep it a secret for the rest of his life. He understood that Joel made an impossible choice, but really only had one option. In acknowledging this, Tommy also let Joel know that he didn't judge him for it, which is huge considering the resentment Tommy felt towards him for their violent and tumultuous past. In the director commentary for this game, the writers frequently mention the concept of tribalism as a key theme. Joel and Tommy are a tribe within a tribe. They have a bond that they don't share with anyone else. This whole opening sequence demonstrates that the brothers have made great strides in repairing their relationship and reestablishing trust. 2 years later, we next see Tommy in the Finding Strings flashback when Ellie was 17 years old.
Anyway, this silent treatment. Man, I forget my own birthday if she didn't remind me when it was.
Here we're getting a first glimpse at potential issues developing between Tommy and Maria, because the implication here is that Tommy forgot her birthday and she was icing him out as a response. It was clear that something was on Ellie's mind, and so Tommy taught her how to use his sniper rifle in an effort to get her out of her own head for a bit.
See that sign there? Red one? Try hitting that. Good way to draw them out of wherever they're hiding.
What the fuck is he doing?
Shit. He's luring them to us.
During this flashback, we got more context about the growing rift between Joel and Ellie. Tommy did his best to connect with Ellie on Joel's behalf, to gently pry into why she had been so quiet and distant.
I'm not supposed to say anything, but Joel's worried about you.
There's nothing to worry about.
Well, I'm sure there isn't. But if you don't talk to him, he's gonna think something's wrong.
This indicates that Joel had confided in Tommy his concern about Ellie, and Tommy was trying to fix it, albeit against Joel's wishes. Though Tommy was well-intentioned here, triangulating himself in their relationship, Joel and Ellie's own little tribe, and playing uncle likely only made Ellie feel more uncomfortable. It seems like Tommy and Maria tended to involve themselves in other people's personal matters in an effort to keep the community healthy, likely because infighting could put the town at risk. Unfortunately, there are some issues an outside third party just can't fix. 2 more years later, the morning after the Jackson Winter Dance, Tommy and Joel were sent out on patrol in response to the increasing reports of infected in the area. It was then that they discovered a lone young woman cornered by a horde of infected. After saving her and escaping the immediate threat, Tommy introduced them to her.
Hey, I'm Tommy. That's Joel. What's your name?
Abby.
Abby, are you okay?
This was Tommy's attempt to reassure Abby, establish trust, and put her at ease with their presence. After all, she's a young woman, shaken up and alone with 2 male strangers. Doing this was not out of character for Tommy by any means, who has on more than one occasion placed altruism over caution, and from his perspective, he's just rescued a lone kid from a life-threatening situation. She also hasn't given him any reason to suspect she's there on nefarious business. In fact, until he uttered their names, she meant no harm towards the brothers at all. Tommy, of course, didn't realize that this act of kindness had just sealed his brother's fate. Imagine being ambushed, overpowered, and knocked out, only to discover when you wake that your brother had been tortured and murdered while you lay unconscious just feet away from him. That night, Tommy came to visit Ellie, who had shown up at the chalet and witnessed Joel's death. This is the second scene that we will need to analyze, and it will be crucial in our understanding of the scene at the farm. As far as given circumstances go, this scene takes place less than 24 hours after Joel's death. Ellie, shocked and traumatized, has already argued with Maria regarding starting assembling a crew to seek vengeance against Abby. And Tommy, who likely has a concussion from being pistol whipped, is stuck in the middle. Keep in mind also that at this point, both Ellie and Tommy know what Joel really did at the Firefly Hospital, but they might not each know that the other knows, and on the first playthrough, the player doesn't know that Ellie knows.
They don't know that we know they know we know.
When it comes to desired outcomes, Ellie clearly wants Tommy to side with her, to demonstrate the same determination to get revenge at all costs. Instead, Tommy is here to convince Ellie not to go.
Maria wants to make sure you're eating.
She can't stop us.
This implies that there has already been a discussion about pursuing Joel's killers, and Maria has already expressed resistance to the idea, which has obviously not sat well with Ellie. Maybe they'd already had a fight about it. The scene between Ellie and Maria the next day definitely contained some already established animosity.
To have the guys that we would need to do this smart, we'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable.
This is Tommy letting Ellie know that Maria's verdict is final. She won't allow multiple of Jackson's defenders to leave on this dangerous revenge quest. It also calls to mind Jesse's repeated saying of, "be smart about it," which seems to be a tagline or rule of thumb in Jackson, aka, don't be stupid, don't take unnecessary risks, don't put yourself in danger, don't be a hero, which ironically is the antithesis to Tommy's sense of honor and almost reckless pursuit of heroism. Notice how Tommy can't even look Ellie in the eye here. He knew she would be unhappy with this result. He himself isn't thrilled with it, but he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So they just get to get away with this?
Nobody wants that.
Yeah, but that's what's happening.
What if we get hit by hunters again?
Is this you talking or is this her?
It's a valid point.
If it were you or me, Joel would be halfway to Seattle already.
No, he wouldn't.
Tommy knows Joel better than anyone. He knows the violence that Joel is capable of, but he also knows that first and foremost, Joel is a protector and a parent. He knows that Joel's primary obligation was to Ellie and her safety. As brutal as Joel's past was, he never enacted violence for the sake of violence. There was always a reason for it, usually to protect someone he loved or to ensure their survival. Joel wouldn't risk taking Ellie with him or leaving her behind if Tommy had been killed, and if it was Ellie that had died, he would simply have nothing left to fight for, because his purpose had been to keep her alive.
He absolutely fucking would be.
Well, we don't even know for certain that they're from Seattle.
Washington Liberation Front. That's what you said was on those patches.
What if they stole those jackets?
That's...
What's the WLF move?
What are you doing?
In this interview with Laura Bailey, she mentioned that in a cut flashback sequence it would have been established that Isaac, the leader of the WLF, was himself a former Firefly and a friend of Abby's father's. This connection with the Fireflies could explain how Tommy was familiar with the WLF and knew where they were located. It would also mean that he'd already begun to suspect who Abby and her friends were and why they had been looking for Joel. Ellie's journal entries will later reveal that she suspected as much too, even before she speaks to Nora. Tommy knows, better than anyone, what Joel sacrificed at St. Mary's Hospital that night. He also knows that Joel had made peace with his choice and didn't regret it. And if Ellie died on this dangerous quest, it would render Joel's sacrifice completely pointless.
You know what? I'm leaving tomorrow. And if you want to come with me, great.
You have no idea what you're walking into. You don't know how large that group is, how armed.
I don't care. You can't talk me out of this.
Tommy is completely torn between duty and loyalty. He wants to go after his brother's killers, of course he does, but he's also the unofficial leader of a town full of people who rely on him. Tommy is struggling with the need to honor his brother versus the life he has carefully constructed for himself, his family, and hundreds of others over the past several years. Remember that Jackson is Tommy's light.
Give me a day to talk to Maria. okay? There's gotta be some folks you can spare.
And if she won't budge?
Well, I'll figure something out. One day. Please.
Tommy asking Ellie to wait a day so he can try to convince Maria is a lie. He has realized that Ellie is hellbent on going, and he also knows that Maria will not budge. The only way he thinks he can resolve this is to delay Ellie, instruct Maria to detain her, and go himself. I think this was also Tommy's attempt to protect Ellie from wandering down a violent path that Tommy already has experience in, but she hasn't yet been exposed to. He's willing to take one for the team, so to speak, to sacrifice his own purpose and potentially even his soul in order to protect Ellie. This, in his eyes, is the right thing to do, the noble thing to do. He couldn't save Sarah or Joel, but he can honor the legacy that Joel left behind. This is Tommy's true motivation for going to Seattle. The next morning, Tommy left Maria a note, took a horse from the stables, and headed out alone to Seattle, traveling hundreds of miles to a strange city filled with warring factions, while still freshly grieving the death of his brother. Of course, Ellie and Dina went to Seattle anyway, and they spent most of their time there trying to catch up with him. On Ellie's first day in Seattle, she and Dina came across a scene where Tommy used Nick, one of the Salt Lake crew members, against another WLF soldier to extract the code to the gate outside the Saravina Hotel. This method of interrogation is the same technique we saw Joel use in part 1, and we'll later see Ellie attempt.
Tommy did this.
This? No way.
That was definitely him. He's one of the ones that killed Joel.
Since settling in Jackson, Tommy had strayed so far from his dark past that Dina, who only knew Tommy in the context of Jackson, couldn't even fathom him carrying out such brutality as this. Tommy's actions are emulating Joel's, a sign that he is regressing to his post-outbreak years when he and Joel used violence to get what they wanted.
He and Tommy slow tortured some big Fedra general? I don't know. I don't buy Tommy doing that, though.
He could do worse.
What do you mean?
He and Joel did a lot to survive after the outbreak.
It's not surprising that Tommy, and later Ellie, would take a page out of Joel's book in order to avenge him, since they both knew the lengths he had been willing to go to protect his loved ones. In fact, both of them might think that this was what real love looked like. But neither Tommy nor Ellie are similar enough to Joel to be able to adopt his methods without it eventually taking a toll on them. Neither of them were able to dissociate from the violence. It affected them differently. This is evidenced by the deterioration of Ellie's mental health that we will witness, as well as in what we know of Tommy thus far, that he has jumped from cause to cause in an effort to find one that didn't enact senseless violence as a means of achieving their goals, which ironically is exactly what he is now doing.
I know you said Tommy had a rough past, but fuck.
I know.
During her time in Seattle, Ellie becomes less concerned with Tommy's whereabouts and more concerned with Abby's. Tommy eventually becomes Ellie's scapegoat for remaining in Seattle and continuing to hunt the Salt Lake crew, despite the fact that Dina is pregnant.
Ellie.
We know her location. Maybe Tommy does too. I can't just leave Tommy. He's out here because of me.
On Ellie's third day, she and Jesse overheard a WLF radio call reporting a sniper at the marina. Jesse wanted to head straight there, convinced the sniper they mentioned was Tommy, but Ellie wanted to continue on to the aquarium in pursuit of Abby. She and Jesse parted ways here, with Jesse finally seeing Ellie's true motivations. Simultaneously, in Abby's perspective, the sniper of course did turn out to be Tommy himself. As Abby and Manny pursued Tommy through the ferry terminal, Tommy killed Manny, shooting him through the eye. Tommy had likely been specifically targeting Manny, who was sent to the marina to retrieve boats for that night's raid on Seraphite Island, and happened to catch a glimpse of his main target at the same time, Abby. However, after a brief fight, Abby overpowered Tommy with the help of Yara, who stabbed him in the side, and Tommy fell into the ocean beneath the pier. From there we can deduce that Tommy surfaced somewhere and ran into Jesse, who had gone to the marina to find him. Jesse must have told him that Ellie had gone to the aquarium, and so the two of them rushed to find her there. When they arrived, Ellie had already killed Mel and Owen and had just discovered that Mel was pregnant. Fun fact, the muffled voice that Ellie hears here isn't actually Tommy, it's Joel.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey,
Tommy pulled Ellie away from the gruesome scene, still limping from the stab wound Yara had inflicted on him. Back at the theater, Jesse and Tommy were planning their route home. When Ellie arrived, Tommy misread her silence as guilt for what she had done to Mel and Owen, but really she was upset that they were leaving without having found Abby.
They got what they deserved.
But she gets to live.
Yeah. Is that okay?
It has to be.
Remember that Tommy's main motivation for being in Seattle was to prevent Ellie from going. Until Jesse found Tommy, Tommy would have had no idea that Ellie, Jesse, and Dina were in Seattle. Now that he knows Ellie is there and they're together again, the best way for Tommy to protect her is to take her home. 7 of the 8 Salt Lake crew members are dead. 3 of the 4 members of Team Jackson are injured or sick. They didn't find Abby at the aquarium, and they have no other leads to her whereabouts. It's time to go. But then, of course, this happens.
Hands up. Back away from your shit. I said back up!
You're making a big mistake.
Don't fucking turn around. Liv, keep your bow on him. Get on the ground.
You gonna kill me like a coward?
You fucking people. Jesse, stand up! Hands in the air, I shoot this one too.
Don't you do it, Ellie. Get out of here.
Stand up! Now!
Don't you fucking dare!
Shut the fuck up! All right?
Stop! Stop!
Toss your weapon.
Toss your weapon!
No.
I know why you killed Joel. He did what he did to save me. There's no cure because of me. I am the one that you want. Just let him go.
You killed my friends. We let you both live. And you wasted it.
Wait! Get off of her!
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Once again, Abby had overpowered him. Once again, Tommy was helpless while another person he cared about died.
Now, implicit in this twofold notion of honor is that it depends on the opinion of others. You can have a sense of your own honor, but that isn't enough. Others must recognize your honor for it to exist. Being the sole judge of your worth, skill, and manhood leads to narcissism and mediocrity. A trophy means nothing if you make it yourself and then give it to yourself. And you can't declare yourself to be an Olympic champion. No one would recognize that. Other people out there recognize that. We like to flatter ourselves and feel like we're better men than we are. And that's why we need men to compete against and to keep us accountable. Thus, honor isn't just an inner state, but it's your reputation as judged by one's peers.
Abby attacking Team Jackson at the theater changed everything. There's a reason why both the midpoint and the climax of the game take place during this sequence. All of the characters were irrevocably changed by this encounter, and it switched up everybody's motivations. Originally, Tommy's main driver was to honor Joel by doing what he thought Joel would want, to keep Ellie safe. He was also motivated by his own desire for justice and, on a deeper level, his need to do the noble or heroic thing. But Tommy was unsuccessful in every goal that he set out to Seattle with. Instead, he was overpowered again. Ellie was beaten nearly to death, and Tommy sustained life-changing permanent injuries at the hands of the very person he had spent days, if not weeks, hunting to no avail. And there was nothing honorable in any of that. In the HBO adaptation, one of the reasons Joel asked Tommy to take Ellie to the Fireflies is because he is not the unstoppable survivalist he once was. He is getting older, he's deaf in one ear, and his instincts aren't as sharp. He fears that his shortcomings in that regard will prevent him from adequately protecting Ellie, and might even get her killed. When Abby attacked Tommy at the theater, that was the 3rd time she or her crew had overpowered him, and the 3rd time he'd been left helpless while someone he cared about died. In addition to re-traumatizing him, this was likely a hit to his ego, as well as a reminder that his skills aren't what they used to be. After all, Tommy is in his early 50s, and he has been fighting trained soldiers more than half his age. The shame Tommy feels towards himself for having failed so spectacularly in Seattle, as well as his injuries being a permanent reminder of those failures, likely generated a lot of self-hatred during the year-long time jump between the theater and the farm. Now, Tommy's motivation is to reinstate his own honor, to prove to himself and everyone else that he is still competent and capable of being an honorable man who pays his debts and settles scores. And so we have arrived at the third and final scene we will be analyzing today. The given circumstances include everything I just mentioned about what Tommy has gone through over the past year. Ellie and Dina left Jackson when Ellie was no longer able to bear living there, and have settled in a farmhouse with their son JJ. We also know that Ellie is suffering from PTSD and is having flashbacks to the day Joel died. We don't know, however, whether Tommy is aware of that or how often they see each other. He shows up at the farm with a tip about Abby's location, possibly the first he's had after a year of searching. As far as the desired outcome goes, he likely expects Ellie to jump up and go immediately, to make good on her promise to him, and to be as eager for Abby to be dead as he is. On the other hand, Ellie's desired outcome is a bit more difficult to discern, especially since she is more reactive in this scene. It could be that she simply wants this conversation to be over. However, I think Ellie actually had a deep subconscious need satisfied by Tommy's visit. Maybe she was hoping he would tell her where Abby was. Ellie's journal entries, which the player will read after this conversation, express her deep unhappiness, the somatic symptoms of her trauma, being unable to meet Dina's needs as a partner, and generally feeling suffocated by life on the farm. Maybe what she needed from Tommy was a reason to leave. The writer suggests that at this point, Ellie may be suicidal. She has been looking for a way out, a reason to risk her life for a year, and now she finally has it. As I mentioned before, usually the best scenes are ones where the characters' desired outcomes are at odds with each other. In this scene, their desired outcomes are actually aligned. Tommy wants Ellie to go, and deep down Ellie does want to go too, or at least she feels she has to. Where the conflict comes from is Ellie's hesitation and Dina's interference. Ellie is torn between doing what she desires to do on a visceral level versus her obligation to Dina and JJ. In this way, her and Tommy's motivations have completely switched from the scene between them following Joel's death, with Dina's position mirroring Maria's. In that scene, they both wanted to go, but Tommy was torn, and Ellie was incensed by his reluctance. In this scene, it's the other way around.
Ow. Ow. Well, that's quite a grip you got there.
Hey, Tommy.
There you are.
Here, let me take him. Come here, bud. Oh, yeah. Go. Here.
Oh, I got it.
Hey.
Hey.
It's good to see you.
You too. He's getting heavy.
No, he's just a big ball of muscle.
Town's good? Maria good?
Oh, she's fine. We're taking some time apart.
AKA, Maria left him.
Sorry.
Nah. We talked about it a lot, and, yeah, it's what we both want, so.
We know that Tommy and Maria are not the best at communicating with each other, as evidenced by Tommy's inability to explain his decisions to her in Part 1, Maria's apparent use of the silent treatment that he tells Ellie about in the Finding Strings chapter, and the fact that he wrote her a letter prior to going to Seattle rather than talking about it with her. I would not be surprised if communication between them had been even worse since Tommy returned from Seattle, especially due to his newfound obsession with revenge, and the fact that he had betrayed her by going at all. Tommy going to Seattle was the second time we had seen him circumvent Maria's wishes and put himself, and by extension Jackson, at risk. Given his and Maria's poor communication, Tommy's repeated prioritization of his own need to be a hero over Jackson and his marriage, and Tommy's increasingly volatile nature, it's unsurprising that their relationship didn't work out. It's also unsurprising that Tommy minimizes this in front of Ellie and Dina, whom Tommy perceives as having a good and healthy relationship. Perhaps he's reluctant to be vulnerable in front of them, or to draw attention to the fact that while they've been living what he thinks is a comfortable life on the farm, his life back in Jackson has been falling apart.
Okay. Oh, come sit. I got something to show you. So I've been putting out feelers for months now. And this new guy heard my story. He told me about a woman that he traded with while he was moving through California. Described her as built like an ox, traveling with a kid with scars across his face. He said they're living along this coast in a beach sailboat. Right here. That's gotta be her.
Quite simply, the subtext to this is, I've found her, now go get her.
We're done with that, so.
Dina inserts herself into the conversation to draw a boundary, both on Ellie's behalf and also to protect their family and their relationship. Dina specifically said, "We're done with that," which could imply they have discussed it and mutually agreed that they, or she, would not pursue this vendetta any further. It somewhat takes the blame directly off of Ellie too, since Dina asserts that this was a family decision rather than one she made on her own. It is also a warning for Tommy. Dina doesn't like where this conversation is going, and knows Ellie will likely find it triggering.
I'm sorry.
Well, I can't go.
I know.
This is Ellie acknowledging what this means, that Abby will get away again and the lead will run dry. They will be leaving Joel unavenged, and her promise to Tommy is broken. And Tommy is looking at her like,
What are you doing?
All right. Reckon it's easy. Forget about her. You sitting all comfy way out here?
Hey.
This is a bitter accusation coming from a place of pain. As we have discussed, Tommy's life has fallen apart since returning from Seattle. But Ellie, from his perspective, has a beautiful partner and baby, no lasting physical injuries, and a peaceful home out in the country. Tommy could perceive Ellie as thriving while he is drowning. He's also witnessing her make the choice he couldn't make, to honor her responsibility to her family. Her choices are making him feel insecure about his own.
I'll make her pay.
Tommy.
That's what you said when we got back to Jackson.
Tommy.
Tommy is reminding Ellie of the promise she made to him, that she'd make Abby pay. But this time it wouldn't just be for Joel's death, it would be for everything else. For killing Jesse, for permanently disabling Tommy, for maiming Ellie and Dina, and for ruining their lives and walking away again.
What a joke.
This was an intentionally hurtful way for Tommy to end this conversation. The joke I think he's referring to is Ellie's behavior, which he perceives to be dishonorable, giving up, breaking promises, and being a coward. Tommy had sacrificed his own family and risked his own life for Ellie's sake, and now she won't return the favor. So not only has she broken a promise, she isn't repaying a debt, and we know that as an honorable person, Tommy takes promises and debts very seriously.
Can you take him, please?
Yeah. Here. I got you. I got you.
Hey, what the fuck was that?
Nothing.
God damn it, Tommy, you know what we've been through.
I'll save it. She made me a promise.
I don't fucking care.
With Tommy and Dina out of the room, we can see Ellie's subconscious desire begin to surface. She is tempted by the tip, by the map that Tommy left behind, which indicates Abby's location. She is taking on all the guilt, shame, and blame that Tommy just lobbed at her and internalizing it. She has been secretly looking for a way out for a year, and now she has it. By refusing to go after Abby, Ellie has extinguished any hope Tommy had of affirming his own self-worth and evoking a sense of meaning in his life. Tommy has become who Joel was before he met Ellie, someone with nothing left besides a fragile sense of purpose, and when that is threatened, he reacts badly. As we have witnessed from Tommy before, when Tommy feels guilty about his own choices and actions, he tends to lash out and blame someone else for them. Projecting his own shortcomings onto Ellie is an outlet for all the shame and anger he feels towards himself for having failed. He failed to avenge his brother. He failed to protect Ellie. He failed in his marriage, and he failed as a leader of Jackson. And in that failure, he has dishonored himself, his family, and his community. This is probably the furthest from a hero he has ever felt. By relentlessly pursuing the reinstatement of his honor, he has forsaken the other parts of his life which once gave him purpose. His brother is still dead, Ellie left town, and his marriage fell apart. Due to his injuries, his inability to walk, and being blind in his shooting eye, he likely can't go on patrol and protect Jackson like he used to. Splitting up from Maria likely cost him his position as a leader in Jackson, considering the town was originally her and her father's initiative, and so he has also lost the thing that gave him purpose. Tommy has lost everything. He hasn't been able to save anyone for all his goodwill and altruism, and so perhaps he has also lost hope that a pacifistic life and a path of light is possible. He is once again lost in the darkness. He literally has nothing left besides the possibility of killing the person he holds responsible for all of it. Because if she is dead, then all of this, everything he has sacrificed and lost, wouldn't be for nothing.
After all we've been through. Everything that I've done. It can't be for nothing.
Tommy's fate serves as a warning for how Ellie could end up if she follows in his footsteps, if she continues to intertwine her own sense of purpose with Joel rather than to define it for herself.
All right, that's it. Dishonor. Dishonor on your whole family. Make a note of this. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow.
The idea that anyone's actions can be unequivocally good or honorable in this world is continually challenged in this story, especially since honor is subjective and inherently selfish. One person's seemingly honorable act could be destroying someone else's life. We see this in Joel's choice to doom humanity to save Ellie, Ellie's desperation to avenge Joel to ease her own sense of guilt, Abby's act of justice resulting in the deaths of all her friends, Tommy's savior complex, and, on a more micro level, in the Finding Strings flashback. Adam and Sydney were a pair of runaway teenagers who fled Jackson in an effort to help survivors in the area. In their goodbye letter, they claimed that they felt guilty for living comfortably in Jackson, while people out in the wild suffered. But no good deed ever goes unpunished in this world, and it wasn't long before they both succumbed to the harsh realities of the post-CBI landscape, leaving their families behind to grieve. Trauma, both psychological and physical, can permanently alter one's brain chemistry. I think an element that frequently goes overlooked or underappreciated when discussing Tommy is the extent of his injuries and the toll they have taken on his body and mind. Head injuries like the one Tommy sustained can lead to personality changes, including increased agitation and aggression, and a tendency to be self-centered. All of these are symptoms that we witness in the scene at the farm. Considering everything Tommy has been through and all he has lost, from his sense of purpose and identity to the only family he had left, it's not surprising that at the end of it all, he is almost an unrecognizable shell of the man he used to be. Both Tommy and Ellie believe that killing Abby will ease the pain of the psychological burden they're both carrying, will ensure that their suffering isn't for nothing, but it won't. In a perfect world, they would rest and undergo lots and lots of therapy, but they don't live in a world where that's possible. They don't have access to healthy coping mechanisms and treatments, and they don't have the foresight and hindsight that we do as an audience. And underneath all their pain, trauma, guilt, and shame, there is still grief. Grief for the people they used to be and the life they used to have, even if it wasn't perfect. Grief for the man who brought them together and then left them behind. And grief for their relationship, which has been irreparably damaged by this confrontation. Complicated grief is defined as being an ongoing, heightened state of mourning that keeps you from healing. Throughout The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie demonstrates almost all of the symptoms of having complicated grief, including but not limited to intense sorrow, pain, and rumination over the loss of a loved one, numbness or detachment, feeling that life holds no meaning or purpose, inability to enjoy life or think back on positive experiences with your loved one, trouble carrying out normal routines, isolating from others and withdrawing socially, depression, deep sadness, guilt, or self-blame, believing you did something wrong or could have prevented the death, feeling like life isn't worth living without the loved one, wishing you had died alongside your loved one. Tommy demonstrates a lot of these symptoms too, and the others could be inferred. I think some players of this game have a tendency to acknowledge only the feelings and experiences of Joel and Ellie without equally considering those of the other characters in the story and how they have been impacted by the events. This is especially true for Tommy, Dina, and of course Abby and her crew. One of the main messages of this game is that everyone has a story and a perspective, and there is always an explanation for how they behave, even if what they do or say is not fair, rational, or easily comprehensible to you. A lot of the stronger negative reactions reactions to this game, amongst other things, are due to a cognitive bias called the fundamental attribution error, which essentially means that we as humans attribute our own behavior, and by extension the behavior of the characters we play as in games, to the context and the situation we are in, but we attribute other people's behavior to their character.
If someone behaves rudely, you think that they are a rude person, but if you behave rudely, you know that that's not who you really are. We're so quick to judge other people as bad, even though they are just like us, human beings who are trying to get through their day, making mistakes as they go. The next time that you catch yourself judging another person, pause and say to yourself, what circumstances are they in right now that might be affecting their behavior? Are they stressed, ill, lacking support, navigating a major challenge in their lives? If so, think about a time that you were in a similar situation and how you might have acted. I bet you'll be able to find some new compassion for them.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please interact with it as it helps me out a lot, and let me know in the comments which scene you'd like me to analyze next. Follow me on TikTok and X for more Last of Us content. And until next time, endure and survive.